Welcome to our science communication panel. I'll be kind of moderating, hosting this. We as scientists, spend most of our time making discoveries, trying to improve our world. And so these findings could be really critical to conservation and improving our life quality. But it's more beneficial when we're able to broadly, influence societal factors and just be able to share that information. So science communication is very important in that in order to share our work, and it's really important to teaching science to younger individuals and stuff. And so this panel here, we'll kind of be discussing how to use Instagram and YouTube, Twitter, and even LinkedIn to disseminate your results and share with your broad audience. And so our first up, I believe we have Eli. If you want to go ahead and click.
So yeah, Eli, if you don't mind.
Eli, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, so I'm Eli. I just recently graduated from Florida State this past spring. I was dual majors in biology and environment and society. Most of my research experience was with marine biology, focused on artificial reefs and benthic invertebrates. I got involved in ESA back in August when I attended the virtual conference for the first time.
Sweet, thank you for that. And so Eli will talk about Instagram and whatnot. And so next we have Tyus, he'll be talking about Twitter. And so Tyus, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks.
Hey guys, my name is Tyus. I graduated from University of Georgia about 2 years ago. I did my undergraduate thesis on jaguars. My major was in fisheries and wildlife science. So I'm really interested in wildlife ecology and carnivore ecology. I got into Twitter and more so the science communication digital realm kind of when I was in around my sophomore year of college. I used to write for a science journalism club, and that's kind of where I made my step into the world of Twitter more so than any of the other applications. So I hope I can answer some of your guys' questions and provide some resources for you guys, and hopefully you guys can get started in your journey as a science communicator. And yeah, hopefully we'll have some fun.
Awesome, thank you. And next up, Ajisha should be talking about LinkedIn and kind of using that professional side to also communicate with science. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So first and foremost, welcome everybody to our second session of the day from our Students and Careers Resource Symposium. Today, again, like Cesar mentioned, we're going to be talking about how to use social media the best way you can as a scientist and share your science. And so I am going to be talking about a particular social media platform that I really is like my first social media platform, LinkedIn. And I'm the word person that first had LinkedIn before any other social platform. So I am also the marketing outreach director for the ESA student section. I am a researcher studying microbiology and immunology. I will be starting my PhD in the fall. My work is with viruses and host immune responses, a really interesting topic to be in the field right now. But right now I'm at home because my lab is closed and I can't enter because of a pandemic. So I hope to be able to give you guys some tips. I'll be sharing my profile, showing you guys how I do things, and then a little tips and tricks as to what you can do with LinkedIn. There's a lot you can do. It's evolved over the years, so I hope to be able to share what I know, and hopefully that will be useful to you as well. So yeah, that's me.
Sweet, thank you. And so I think that's all we have in this little intro, and then we'll switch over to Eli. Has a little presentation for us, and we'll be talking about Instagram and YouTube and whatnot.
Yep. And everybody should be able to share their screen as in the panelists, so that way everybody should be co-host already.
Okay. All right, so sorry, a little extension of my intro. I am also a Fulbright scholar for this next year, and I have been using YouTube as the past 9 months to kind of talk about my journey so far with marine science and where it's going. I talk about a lot of career development and a little bit of productivity and different things related to marine science on my YouTube channel. But my Fulbright will be in the Philippines studying giant clams. Forgot to add that. Okay, so as a scientist, I want you to think about some of your largest goals as a scientist. And what exactly are you trying to achieve through your career? So this is one of the big questions I just want to start with, because social media can be your greatest tool as a scientist. And I believe that it is incredibly underutilized in science, because connection is absolutely vital in making sure that information is transcribed and moved across the world fast. So some things that you might be thinking about, some goals for your future as a scientist, that you might be thinking about: to educate the broader public about important issues and reach communities that need it most, to make a respectable income and maybe even afford a few nice things, or to give back to coming generations and provide resources and opportunities that will last forever. And today I'm going to be talking about how YouTube can help you do all of these things. And so YouTube is actually a very unique platform in that, much unlike other social media platforms, it actually functions as a search engine. So it's the second largest search engine in the world. So because of that, everything on YouTube is very searchable. And this is really useful for science because there's a lot of keywords and terms that we use within each niche. So within marine science, within benthic invertebrates, you can't exactly search and find a lot of information on that for Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. You're a little limited in what you're actually able to find. But YouTube's really incredible in this aspect because it allows you to search by keywords. Another really great benefit of YouTube is that once you reach 1,000 subscribers, you actually will get paid for every single view on your videos for the rest of time, that your bank account is attached to your YouTube account. And once you gain a substantial following, sponsors will actually pay you anywhere from $1,000 up to $30,000 per video. And so this is kind of similar to other social media platforms, but the business and financial opportunities surrounding YouTube are tend to be much higher than other platforms. And then in addition, more people are actually paying attention to you. And this can help you if in the future you want to hire or be hired as a coach or mentor, or be exposed to future job opportunities. So one thing that I kind of touched on in the last presentation was about how gaining a following and becoming kind of an influencer as a scientist on YouTube, it's really not about clout. And I think in other social media platforms, we can get really caught up in this chase to just get likes and just get a following, which doesn't really tie to our goals as a scientist. And that's why I started this presentation talking about your goals and have you start thinking about them as a scientist, because it can be really easy on social media to just kind of post things like whatever, to just get likes and just get clout or whatever. And on YouTube, the key to delivering successful content, the most successful channels are channels that provide videos that actually have a lot of value to them. Because unlike other social media platforms, people are on your videos or on your content for much longer periods of time. They're not just there for a few seconds reading a post. They're on it for a few minutes or up to 20, 30 minutes watching your videos. And because of this, it's really important to actually post things that have a lot of value. But it can be really easy to fall into a trap of just posting things that that are just there for entertainment. So some ways that you can use YouTube as a scientist. Here's just a few examples. If you are recording a presentation for any sort of purpose, either in-person presentations or for virtual presentations, if you're already presenting something, you might as well just upload it to YouTube, because you can have it be seen by a far larger audience, and you can actually have it be much more searchable than other platforms. Other reasons you might want to use YouTube for your science are sharing insights on research techniques and what is working for your research, what's not working for your research. This is, I think, one of the most incredible things that I think YouTube can be used for, just because the amount of times that I've looked up how to run a specific line of code, or how to do a specific type of research methodology related to my coral restoration work, it's basically impossible to find visual representations of that anywhere besides some peer-reviewed articles. But YouTube can be a space where you can actually post these videos and have a very clear representation of how to do these things. Another thing that you can do is sharing day in the life videos. And this is one way that I think is really valuable for a lot of younger populations. Recently, I've been having a lot of younger students and middle school and high school age people reaching out to me saying that I've been inspiring them with their video or with my videos talking about my life in marine science. And it's really cool to know that all these younger people in science, or soon to be in science, are inspired to pursue it even more. And talking about what you love. So, like I mentioned before, YouTube can be really beneficial because it is a search engine, because you can be paid to post or for people watching your videos forever. And if you are a scientist, you act more or less as a bit of an entrepreneur. You are always going to be searching for funding, trying to get more money, trying to get more collaborators. And if you are posting more information on YouTube, then you can not only have a little source of income on the side, passive income, but you can also have more opportunity to be exposed to future collaborators, which helps you as a bit of an entrepreneur in science. Some last pro tips for using YouTube in science is to make sure that you have great keywords. Keywords are incredibly important, is to make sure that your thumbnail is actually attractive and clearly represents what you're going to be talking about. And try to avoid clickbait, but make sure that it's going to be something that people are actually going to be attracted to. And use TubeBuddy. TubeBuddy is a really fantastic resource to help get your videos more well-known and figure out how to really figure out effective keywords for your specific niche.
Sweet, thank you, Eli. Yeah, that's great. If you guys have any questions for Eli, go ahead and hold them to the end and or just tap in the chat box, and Eli can respond to them throughout the next presentation by Tyus, or we're going to have a Q&A at the very end to talk to Tyus, Ajisha, and Eli about their respective platforms. And so Tyus, if you want to go ahead and kickstart yours.
Okay, cool. I am ready to go.
Sweet.
Sure.
And that was a really great presentation, Eli. That was really great.
All right, well, guys, you guys already did a great introduction, so I don't need to further introduce myself. My name is Tyus Williams. Some of you guys maybe already follow me on Twitter already at my handle Science with Tyus. It's the same for my Instagram, and it's also the same for TikTok, which I've recently jumped on. I promised myself that I wouldn't cave and get on TikTok, but the pandemic makes us do some things. So, you know, it is what it is. But I'm really excited to talk to you guys about Twitter. It's actually probably my favorite social media platform that I think I use for science communication. And I kind of want to give you just like a general crash course on how you can navigate Twitter a little bit, understanding your identity and being comfortable in a world where Twitter is understood as generally the professional platform that scientists generally use within the form of science communication. I find out of Instagram or out of like TikTok, most scientists are generally on Twitter on a professional level. And it's a great way to network, and it's a great way to establish relationships with people. So, all right. So the first thing I want to mention is when you're getting on Twitter, like you kind of have to ask yourself, like, who are you? Like, what are your interests? Explain that. This is my profile. And if you go and find me, like it is my name is Tyus D. Williams. I'm a wildlife ecologist, science communicator, and then tell people about you. Like, I think people often sometimes skew the idea of professionalism with the idea of a wholesome perspective of your identity, and let people know who you are. You're a scientist as well as a human being, and you have to let people know that. Like, I have ADHD, I'm neurodivergent, I'm a climber, I'm a hiker, And I'm the founder of SciQ Friday, which I'll get into a bit later. And this is who I am. And when I look at this photo of myself actually on here, I'm really happy with it because it's like, I think it clearly represents the kind of person that I am. You know, I'm always outside looking for animals, as you can see in my location when I'm not inside during a pandemic. And if you have a website, make sure to put that also in your link. So you can also go to tyusdwilliams.com and you can find me. Always use your resources to your advantage when you're on any platform to broadcast and showcase yourself and highlight yourself to the fullest extent. When I was writing and when I was working for the Science Journalism Club, Athens Science Observer at UGA, the editor-in-chief, he made a really good point that always stuck in my head since then. He said, you have to treat science, you have to treat your platform as if it's as if you're marketing yourself every single day. Like it is your brand. You have to treat your science career. You have to treat your profession as if it's your brand. Treat it with the utmost caution, but treat it also with the utmost respect and enjoy it too. And that's always stuck with me since then because it is true. Like this is your brand, what you choose to do on social media, and cherish that because it's going to be an incredible journey for you. So the next thing I wanted to point out is a lot of people are really hesitant about getting on social media because they're like, well, like, I don't know, like what to do. Like, I don't know, like how to get people interested in things. Well, I just want to let you guys know straight off the gun that the characteristics of your personality is 75% of your brand. Like you're already there. Like who you are as an individual, your innate being and character is already intrinsic enough to the point where people cannot copy you. And if they try, they might utterly fail because there's an element to your personality that is only unique to you, where you execute it on a level so proficiently that it's hard for others to mimic it. People can try to imitate me, but it's not going to be Tyus Williams. You know what I'm saying? So like cherish that and embrace the person that you are because you'll stand out naturally on your own. Your individuality, your knowledge, and your active voice. These three components are unique just for you. So always remember that. Everybody does this, but it never comes out the same. So always remember that when you're navigating on social media, especially on Twitter. And so one of the other big questions that I like to ask as well is, what is your mission? When you go onto these platforms, like, you know, whether it's Eli, you know, being on YouTube, whether it's being on Instagram or whether it's being on Twitter, whether it's being on TikTok, like what is the general objective? Like, are you going on there to network? Are you going on there to find resources? Are you going on there to make friends? And once you establish that, you can kind of therefore go into the three major things to consider when doing science communication, which is what I like to call the rule of W's, which is what is your goal? Why is it important? And who are you talking to? You can replicate this every time you engage with somebody over social media and appropriately adjust for it based on the individuals or the constituents you're surrounded by. If you're navigating between scientists, it's like, okay, cool. You flip on the science switch and you start dropping the lingo and whatever lexicon that you need to use in order to step into that network. If you're talking to non-scientists, you're like, okay, I need to bring it back a little bit. I need to make sure that I'm clarifying and I'm, providing information that's clear and concise for them to understand, so that you're inclusive for all people that are interacting with you on a social media platform. So those are really important things to consider. Always take into mind. I feel like number 3, I think is, in my personal opinion, the most important. Always take into consideration who are you talking to when you're interacting with somebody on social media. And I wanted to make this slide because I know some people are really concerned about social media. I gave a guest lecture at UC Davis many months ago, and I had actually had a lot of people ask me in the crowd. They were kind of concerned about it. They're like, "Well, we're a little kind of scared to get on social media." And I asked them, I was like, "Let's talk about that. Let's get into it." And they actually came up with some really interesting, concerns or hesitations holding them back. And what they came up with was fear of error. There's this idea that as a professional or as an emerging, professional or young scientist in the field, that error is unacceptable, that perfection is the only option. And unfortunately, that's not true. And when you have such an overbearing weight like that on your shoulders, it makes it really difficult to try to step into a realm where error is just inevitable. You have to remember that you're human and you're prone to it. And that's, I think, the most important thing is, as long as you remain transparent and honest, like, you'll be okay. In fear of criticism, which is another one. I've made mistakes before. I've made mistakes. I might have said something, it might have been off by a little bit. Or sometimes people just want to criticize you just to criticize you. And you have to remember, most of the time, it's generally not your fault. Sometimes people just want to just say things just to say things, and you have to learn how to let them roll off your back. I've had people harass me and come at me from nowhere and be like, this is absolutely incorrect. Like, you have no clue what you're talking about. And you got to just be like, ma'am, like, I literally, this is what I study every day for fun in terms of my passion. Like, I wouldn't have posted this unless I had done my research and done my background. And you leave it at that. You apologize in the circumstances if you need to, you clarify when you need to, and then you move on. And then the third one, which is the most important one, is imposter syndrome. Who am I to step into this field of PhDs and elite scientists and say that I have a voice or I have knowledge to offer to the mass of individuals in the public? And the truth is that you do have a lot to offer. Diversity brings in newfound perspective. And because of that, it's important that you're here, because you have an insight to contribute that might not have been considered by other individuals around you. And that's why people are constantly pushing for DEI and inclusive efforts, because when you bring in diversity, you're bringing in new, unfounded ideas and thoughts that have never been heard before. And that's the reason why I hope that you continue on this journey. And I hope that you find a place where you feel comfortable in this community on Twitter and social media. So just to give you an example of like what my Twitter page looks like, you have to figure out like what works for you. This doesn't play. This is just an image. You can go on my Twitter. I can send a link. Let me know, Caesar, because I can send links to stuff if you need me to, for like videos and everything. But I'm kind of like, if I had to describe myself, I'm kind of like Urkel combined with SpongeBob in Beast Boy from Teen Titans. And like, I'm very goofy and I'm very comedic. And like, you kind of have to figure out who you are when you're like portraying that through social media. And I'm very silly and it works for me, and people resonate with that. But at the same time, I'm accurate. I'm very detailed with my information, but I'm also like very funny. This was recently posted on my TikTok. And it gained a lot of reception, which is really awesome. But this is just an example of like the kind of person that I am. I like to talk about things sporadically. I pop out of nowhere one day and I'll be like, here's a video for you guys. And people will be like, Tyus is at it again. And that's the kind of person that I am. You also have to figure out generally like what works for you. I'm the founder of SciQ Friday. I love talking to people about science. I love sitting down and having a conversation about, why did you get into this specific field? And I think it's partly because I love podcasts too. So I just love the dialogue and exchange between people. And I found that no one's ever done this before, which is crazy to me that it's never been tapped into. But what I figured out is that like, I'm really good at interviewing and asking questions and engaging a conversation. And it might not work for everybody in that capacity. So the point of this image is just to show you that like, this is what works for me, but you have to find what works for you. What do you enjoy the most outside of science? Do you enjoy writing music? Do you enjoy interpretive dance? Do you enjoy crafts? And you can find a way to infuse that with science. Maybe you like rapping and you make up rap songs with different topics of science. If you could combine those two together and just like completely just like clutch it and do it a really good job, like you would probably be famous. I mean, I've seen many people do it before, and every single time it always impresses me, every single time. And you have to figure out what works for you. Maybe you write music, infuse it with science. Maybe you do poetry and infuse it with science. The point of this image is basically find your thing, because when you figure it out and you kind of hone in on it, you'll make it your niche, and then you'll like explode with strength and confidence over time, doing it more and more as you go on. This is an example of one of my most recent SciQ Fridays that I did with my friend Jada Elcock, and we talked about sharks, marine science, and diversity in the field of shark science. And also, I think this is a really good image too, because I wanted to point out that like, you're also a person, going back and relating to the fact that convey your most internal values in as a person, and like how you view the world. And it doesn't always have to be science 24/7, and like it's basically like find a balance. Like these are just things that I care about, and this is an example of a tweet that I posted that a lot of people were like, wow, Tyus, this is a really profound and beautiful thought that you had, and it's okay to share these things with you. Be yourself, I think, is the most important thing that I can convey to you guys. And people will cherish you for who you are, and you will find your community and network of those individuals that will interact with you. And I think most importantly, last but not least, is to make sure to have fun. Raise your hand if you want that student loan debt relief, and you just gotta have fun. You gotta be able to just post things on social media, interact with your friends, and be able to go like, hey guys, I'm a scientist, I'm a human being. I love comedy, and I love making friends, and I love interacting with all these people, and at the same time simultaneously providing knowledge. If you guys have any questions, particularly about things specifically in Twitter, I'd be more than happy to answer it when we move on to the Q&A. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing that I can wrap up when it comes into jumping on Twitter is figuring out what you want the most to gain out of interacting on Twitter. And I think once you figure that out and you immediately delve into it and you dive in, you'll find yourself extremely comfortable navigating with different people and jumping onto threads and commenting on different topics. And next thing you know, you'll just be making friends at the next conference you go to, and it's going to be great. So I hope you guys all learned a little bit from this brief little presentation. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a couple of things to add. Cesar, if you can, so Tyus, you covered like how you to be a scientist, kind of like the how to like tweet and all those sorts of a lot of great information there. So we did a webinar, I think the how to like create, so like it's essentially like Twitter 101. It's like how to make a post, how to do bookmarks and all of that. And Cesar, if you can link that video down in the chat, so that way people can check that out and that's essentially like for people who have never used Twitter before or any other social media platform. So that might be a useful resource. And I really liked your point about like what you said about marketing yourself and how you need to be confident in what you have to offer.
Yeah.
That is something I tell people who I mock interview for, like when they go to grad school interviews, like you got to be confident in yourself. And that's like literally the same exact word. And like because you're marketing yourself and your skills. That was a really good point to make. And is it my turn now, Cesar?
Yeah, let me jump off.
Yeah. Oh, Cesar. Oh, okay. I'll just go ahead and switch. Did you have anything to add before? Oh, give me one second.
Are you talking to me, Ajisha? Is that?
No. Yeah, you said my name right. I was asking Cesar. I think he's frozen. Yeah, he is. So I'm just gonna jump in and get started for the minute. So all I'm going to do, so before I even share my screen, so today I'm going to be talking about LinkedIn, and I was going to ask Cesar to so we also did a how-to on LinkedIn. I did that. So that's essentially like how to do a post, how to, find people and all that. I will be sharing my profile and to show you how I do things and how I have been doing things. And I have pretty good of a following. My segment is really not going to be interesting as both Eli and Tyus is, because LinkedIn is really a networking platform more than anything for scientists. But like Tyus, you mentioned, like Twitter is really where I see the most engagement, professional engagement even for scientists. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I don't know what I'm doing with this. Okay, Karina, if you're there, can you let me know when Cesar jumps back in?
Yeah, I will let you know.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna share my screen.
He's restarting his computer.
Yeah, I got that message too. All right, so here's my profile. So LinkedIn is pretty cool. I don't know how many of you have never used LinkedIn before, but this was my first profile on social media. Like Tyus mentioned, you need to be really comfortable with yourself to like be on social media. I wasn't until last year, and it took me a lot of effort to put myself in front of a camera like this and post these videos on YouTube. I was very, very insecure as to putting myself out there because I didn't really know that, that I would be supported and all of that fun stuff. So for me, social media is kind of like a fairly new thing, and Twitter has been where I've been interacting the most. But I also do have a professional profile on LinkedIn, and that's what I'm going to share a little bit about. My computer is deciding to be very, very glitchy today, so I'm just going to wait. So can you guys see my screen? Eli? All right.
Yep, it looks good. I'm back. I'm sorry.
No worries. I'm glad that you're back. Cesar, if you don't mind, can you put the link to the LinkedIn webinar on the chat so that way people can watch it after they finish up the session? So LinkedIn is a platform that is primarily used for networking and for finding job opportunities. So two things that always is associated with LinkedIn. Again, LinkedIn is something that as a scientist, as a science communicator, there is not much of an avenue. Only thing you can do is that you can share your posts from other platforms. That's what I've seen. Of course, I've seen a lot of people creating career resources and other job opportunity related content that they post on LinkedIn. But in terms of just, SciComm, of course you can do it. There's no one stopping, but for the avenue, for what I've seen before, it's mostly other platforms like Twitter and YouTube. So today what I'm going to touch on is kind of like how to set up your basic profile and how to get the most out of your LinkedIn profile. And as a scientist in the STEM field, I am not seeing too much ways you can utilize that job search option, but slowly people are evolving and going into LinkedIn, posting postdoc opportunities, grad student opportunities that were not there a few years ago. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little share. So before I begin, so just setting up the general profile, this is how it looks. You can have a header, you can have a photo. I hear a lot of controversy about the photo, like it needs to be a headshot. I always said, like I mentioned in the previous webinar, it does not have to be a headshot. That is a photo taken at my 20th, my birthday last year, and it looks professional enough. And, I've seen people doing pictures all the time, like scientists having pictures like of them in the lab or them doing the work that they do. And that's perfectly all right. And again, I think Tyus mentioned this earlier. You are not just a scientist or a professional, you're also a person. So your profile should reflect that, and your employers should kind of be okay with it, or the people in your network kind of have to be okay with it because that's who you are. So for me, what's important to me is what I put as my name, and obviously have leeway here. So I mentioned my full name. And this, I find it's very important to keep it professional, is to have my full name. And then for me, it's important that I share my pronouns. So that's also on my name. So that's a way that you kind of customize your profile to who you are as a person and what you represent. And again, don't be shy, and nobody really can question what you put on there. So it's up to you. But for me, this is the way I customize. And the header, I think this, again, a more detailed version of how to do all of these things will be in that webinar link below. But I also have a header, and this is something I decided when I was like, oh, I'm going to go into social media and have a professional account on Twitter, and also kind of move my connections on LinkedIn. I made a header. I'm pretty sure this will show up. So this is something I made on Canva. It's pretty easy. Canva is free. And Cesar, if you also don't mind putting the link for Canva, I'm pretty sure everybody should be already familiar with Canva. It's a pretty popular platform. It's what we use for all of our flyers. So Eli's been doing a really great job with that. So for me, I put my name, my title. I do a lot of things. So I want to make sure everybody kind of gets a gauge of what I do. So I do biomed research. I work with virus microbiota interactions, host immune responses. I do science education research with ESA. I do science communication work. I'm the marketing outreach director. So I do a lot of things. So this is kind of the hash that they see, like a non-bio that they kind of see when they open my profile. And again, another thing I'm really careful about when I post is because whenever someone Googles your name, anything you post on really big social media platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm not seeing too much activity on my Facebook because I don't post on Facebook that much. But if you Google my name, you will definitely see my LinkedIn pop up first, or my Twitter, whichever one's getting the highest engagement at that point in time. And the photos that I post as profile photos, everything will be sent to the internet. So I always ask to be careful, but also don't let that take away from your individuality. So, and then next thing, where I work is another thing that I would put on here. Another cool thing, if you're looking for jobs, and again, this is something you can add on here, is open to work. So if you're open to work for, let's say, all of these different positions, and then you can make it visible only to recruiters. Now, in that sense, nobody else can see it unless they are actually a recruiter coming through LinkedIn. The other part where you can really customize and kind of show who you are as a person, what your profile is going to be doing. Again, a profile on LinkedIn or any other social media doesn't have to be just you as a person, like a personal profile. It can also represent a project you're doing, an initiative that you're representing, or some other things you want to, like if you're posting constantly about, like, let's say career development content specific to, for me, let's say biomed. So then my bio would have things like that, like other social media profiles I have, a web page, if I have one, a blog, something like that, everything would go on there. So so I fashioned this similar to the way as you would do a summary for your resume, like, a brief to a couple of sentences about who you are as a person and what you would bring to every job or whatever, whoever it is that's hiring you. So that way they can kind of get a gauge as to who you are as a person by reading about you. And you have a lot more space here than other social media like Twitter. You have a certain character limit. Don't have that here, at least as far as I've seen. So you have a lot more leeway to express yourself and share what you're doing. Most likely my favorite my tool that LinkedIn has to offer that I love for my profile is my featured. So this is usually where essentially you can put your posts, you can feature your posts on your board, and you can feature your paper. So this is my recently published paper, and I can reorder it as I like, and I can put stuff in here. I also upload my CV and other things. So these are things that you can do, and certifications. And these are things that, let's say if you're applying for a grad school position like I was, and my LinkedIn profile is always linked with my CV. Usually whoever is reviewing my CV will click on it, and this is where it will take them. And the first thing they'll see is obviously my profile, my picture, my header, my bio. And then right after that, what you'll see is the highlights that I featured on this board. And if they see like a paper or some cool thing that I'm doing, like the symposium, those are the things that will show up first. And that's really a way that you can kind of push yourself forward instead of them having to go through all the way down to your profile, because most recruiters won't read all the way down to every single thing you have listed. If you look at mine, there's a lot. So people usually won't read past your experience. You can add a lot of stuff here. It's like I still have my high school listed. I created my LinkedIn profile when I was in high school, so I still have that on here. Another place is where I asked that to if you have all of your transcripts and other things, if you want to add it on here, go for it. It always gives them the extra push that, oh, hey, they have the grades to prove it. And another thing is certificates and other things. Let me backtrack a little bit. I think I was talking about. So the other thing I wanted to talk about and make sure all of you guys have this. Again, let me reiterate that LinkedIn, again, is a personal profile first. And what I'm talking about is essentially a personal profile and how you promote yourself as a scientist to people who want to recruit you in the future. So you can add as many skills as you like. Pretty sure I have a bunch of skills listed, and you can list 3 top skills. So add the ones that you're most proficient with, and add the ones that are most closely aligned with the job that you're seeking at the moment, if you are seeking for a job. And then you can also always ask your connections for endorsements, which is something I'll get to in a little bit. I feel like I'm going to run out of time soon. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about connections and then how you can use this in a different way. But again, people are really not going to read all the way down through all of my 14 projects and other things. They're probably not going to get to the end of it, because all they're going to look for is your bio, your kind of general idea of what posts you have, your education, and the main part is your experience. Again, please watch the YouTube video from the webinar for details on how to write these things. I do touch on that all the time over there. So, all right. So let me get back to network. Let me see. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute. Make sure my message is not showing up there. So, all right. Okay, go ahead and get started. So, in this sense, my presentation, well, what I'm talking about is really going to be just overview as to what you can do. So please ask me specific questions in the Q&A so that way I can answer them while we're there. And I'm really going to, oh, never mind. I thought I saw something in the chat. All right, so a couple things I will wrap up with here. So this is my network page. LinkedIn has a really, really useful aspect. LinkedIn functions very, very similarly to Facebook. I know some of you guys have Facebook, or a lot of you guys probably do have Facebook. So it has similar things. It has connections, it has contacts. So this imports literally everything from my Gmail. So it has everything on there. And it suggests events that I might be interested in. And the other thing, mainly when it comes to like connecting with people, it suggests people from places you've worked in. So let's say I was a student at San Jose College like 4 years ago, and now there's someone there who's been doing incredible work, and they find me through this like search function that like, oh, do you want to connect with them? And I'm like, oh, they're doing similar work and they're working with me, so that's another connection you add. And another thing you can add here is teammates, and I think this is private to you. So what you can add here is people you worked with. So let's say on a publication, Cesar, Eli, and I worked on a publication recently. And if I put them as teammates, when I put that as an experience or a project, then that will show up. And let's say, okay, maybe not having them as an example because you're here. So I work with ESA. So I have my supervisor and everybody in ESA, and they're my teammates. They're put as my teammates on here. So one of them gives me an endorsement. So that's another thing that I wanted to touch on finally. So endorsements are essentially the way the people who try to find you will know that, okay, they work with them. It's like an indirect recommendation that always is really helpful to like validate your skills. So I'm going to try to see if I can pull up my teammates. It really, let me see. It really doesn't show up. Okay, so they're fine with it. So these are my teammates from my ESA project, the study that I do. And let's say that one of them gives me a recommendation, then that person can see that the person I worked with, who was my supervisor, has given me a recommendation. Rec letters only really work for grad school applications. Other places have references that you put on your resume. So this way you can have an added response as to having them validate your skill. So this is the last thing I wanted to like show. And I think a final point I had is like use groups and other things. LinkedIn functions almost, well, not exactly the same, but has so many of the functions that Facebook does. And, just use it, connect with people, join groups that you're interested in. And another thing, I think in the last session, they touched on it, is that don't let social media take away too much of your time. And this can happen with any form of social media, either be Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it is. Make sure you have a time balance. LinkedIn, if you actually want to actively work with LinkedIn and update your profile, the only thing I would personally recommend and I would do as a scientist is to make sure your profile gets updated like quite often, especially if you're applying for jobs. Like update your CV on there, update what you're looking for. Make sure you have all of those things updated, because if they don't see that and you put your LinkedIn profile on your application, make sure you do that. So that's about all I have. So I guess we can move on to the Q&A. Cesar, I'll leave it back to you.
Sweet, thank you. Yeah, Tyus kind of answered this one early on, but Christine asked, and Eli might want to answer this as well as you. Are any of you ever scared of having experienced backlash from certain groups on social media, i.e. racists, climate skeptics, the non-vacciners, those kind of people?
I think that on YouTube specifically, that was a whole new experience for me. Just like, you really got to put yourself out there, creating a whole video 10 minutes long of you talking. There's so much room for you to say the wrong thing. There's so much room for you to like say something that's going to offend someone, and especially if it's going to a video that could potentially blow up, or a post that could like potentially blow up. That's why, as someone that is talking about science and talking about not as much my own personal experience, I spend a lot of time editing my videos to make sure that I take out anything that is controversial, because the last thing I want is to say the wrong thing that I don't realize is going to offend someone. But then, yeah, on Instagram, I don't know. It's at some point you have to have some confidence in what you're talking about, and that you did do enough research on it, and that you did actually know what you're talking about. I think this is something that comes up when I talk more about science and my more like sciencey related videos, that I actually sit down and I go through every single study. I make sure everything is a good, well-refuted study. And I actually link all of the research articles in the description, just because I am really worried about getting called out. I am really worried about saying the wrong thing, because there is talking about science and talking about many things on social media will always have room for someone to not like what you're saying, or for a perspective that you never thought about to exist.
Yeah, if I can add on to that. So I think another thing is that for me, I was always really off social media, like it was always private until Twitter came around, and I was like, oh, this is a great networking place, and people actually are pretty supportive. But with my experience with social media, I've always been concerned about putting like my face, my videos that I do webinars or other things on a public platform, because I've gotten comments about my appearance and the fact that people don't like it. So and comments like that really do hurt, and they are not gonna never come around. I mean, you might be lucky enough to never get one of those, but those do come around, and I think at that point, your support, like from other people on the platform, like the people who follow you, the people who work with you, like your friends, your family, that's really that helped me to kind of be like, okay, I am doing some good work. And I still remember from one of the first webinars that we posted on the student section, that I shared on my profile, someone commented, I don't know who it was because I blocked that person right after I read that comment, but what they said was, this is utter trash. Why did you do this? And I'm like, well, this is helping people. I did this because somebody else asked me to do it. And that was students that we wanted to amplify. And I was like, yeah, block, sorry, your comment isn't worth here. So, things like that do happen. And, and another thing I want to mention, I think this is something I said when I first started talking about the profile photo. And this is something I got a lot when I had my LinkedIn profile photo as something that was not a headshot. People were like, why don't you change it? And another thing is, I still remember they told me I had red lipstick on my photo. And they were like, that's not professional. And I had my hair down. That's not professional. I'm like, well, this is kind of like how you would see me at work. Probably with my hair tied up if I'm in the TC room, but this is kind of like how you see me. So it's who I am as a person. I don't have to change that just because you don't think that's professional. I do. So that's good enough. And that getting to that point is hard, but I think it's still the support of your people that are around you that will help you get to that point. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Dylan asked this kind of a quick one. How old were you when you first started social media, or how long have you been on your respective platform in terms of science communication? If you want to start with Tyus and then go to Eli and then Ajisha.
I think that's a broad question. I think in general, I think I started getting on social media when I was around in middle school. I mean, everybody I think had Facebook at that time, but I think to answer that question straightforward, but taking it seriously and actually doing science communication, I would say doing serious science communication, I would probably say late high school, early college is when I started. But yeah, I would say I got on social media probably when I was I want to say 13 or something like that. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 13. So
yeah, I think I had Facebook in middle school, and then an Instagram in high school.
Yeah,
I started it.
Yeah, that was kind of a transition for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought of it as a tool or thought of it as anything more than just a fun entertainment kind of thing until I went to college and started realizing the potential to form a really solid network and a really discover a lot of opportunities through it. And yeah, college is when I really started using more social media a lot more intentionally. That's when I got a LinkedIn also, and really started working on my LinkedIn. And then YouTube was very recent. That was last May.
Yeah. I think I was my first social media was actually Facebook, and never mind, it was LinkedIn, and it was in high school when I was 16, senior year. So my last year of high school, I was 16, and now my professional profile on Twitter, that was started 2 years ago technically, but I only had like about 10 followers. And now I have like, I think close to 1.4K, but that all came after last August, after I started posting content myself and started actively networking and reaching out to people. So my social media presence has been like less than a year, like professionally, on which I would market and link in other places that would show up if somebody Googles my name. So that's been my experience. Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you, guys. Next question is, would you recommend having a separate personal and scientific account, or just one? I know my personal recommendation would be I recently created an account. It was great for all your non-scientific needs when you just want to tweet. But for the panel,
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I would recommend that. I've been recommended that, but I really don't tweet about anything other than, you know, my work stuff. I'm that person that has very little interest outside of who I am. So probably the only other thing I probably would tweet about is like badminton, which I play professionally. So, but that's a part of me. So I'm not going to have a separate account for it. But if you're a person that enjoys like doing some other recreational activities, you have other things that like a project or something that you want to have a separate account for, I would highly recommend it. And it often is helpful and useful, especially if you don't want the people in your professional circle to look at your tweets. It's always helpful to have a private or, you know, a non-professional one that you don't really share to your people within your field. So that would be the recommendation I would have. But for LinkedIn, have one, because that is going to be like your brand. You can have an additional one, but there really is I don't see a point personally in having 2 accounts on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is essentially you networking yourself, marketing yourself, and then finding jobs. So I don't see how it would be fruitful unless you have another initiative that you need to create an account for.
I feel like if you're really trying to like really do science communication and really use social media intentionally to get something more out of it than just entertainment, then I feel like more often than not, I would recommend having separate accounts from your personal stuff and your professional, just because it's really nice to have a very uniform kind of brand on social media. I ended up creating a separate account. I haven't really worked on it too much yet for my Instagram, but I realized that a lot of my friends and followers do not care about my science and they don't care about a lot of those more hardcore science related posts. And also, I really want to post some personal things every now and then. And having a separate professional account is really nice to kind of not ever pull away from like a professional image, I guess, and a professional brand that you're creating. You don't really have to worry about your brand ever, I don't know, becoming too personal.
It's a really good topic. I like the whole point, like whether you should make a personal account or not. I feel like I already have enough social media, enough as it is. Juggling personal accounts would just already be too much for me. But I also feel like, and it's different for everybody, I feel like depending on like the kind of person that you are, what your topics are of like consistent discussion may require a personal account. Whereas like usually most of the time I'm like, if I'm on Twitter, if I'm on Instagram, most of the time I'm talking about things that are relevant to my lifestyle as a scientist. It kind of goes back into that duality of where it's like I am one and the same as like I am a scientist, but I'm also like a Black man in America, and I should be able to like equally talk about both as one. It's like it's not like I'm just a wildlife biologist professionally. It's like I am a Black wildlife biologist, and like I should be able to tweet about that professionally and go like, here are the barriers of what I have faced as a scientist in the field. And if somebody gets offended by me talking about DEI issues as somebody who's experienced it, then that's not my problem. Offended by that, if you don't think it's professional, then that's not a fault on my part. That's a insecurity on the other person's ability to not recognize the systemic issues. So like, I I think it's a case by case scenario. Like I think people need to find like the tightrope or find the line that they want to walk. But obviously, if you want to just like roast, then maybe having a personal account is appropriate for you, because some people do. Some people just want to go off on social media, and I get that. And so you have to figure out what's appropriate for you. But I've never really had an issue with the way I tweet or done Instagram. Sometimes I just want to say stuff that's off the cuff, but most of the time I think it's just because people appreciate that I'm transparent and I'm honest, that it's like, yeah, this is Tyus, like this is 100% him, like, unapologetically being himself. So it's like, and I think there's just a way that you can properly filter that. Like if you're just saying like obscene statements, that's different, but like as long as you're conscious of what you're saying, like, and you try to filter it to some degree, I think you can do it on one account. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love that you talked about and kind of intertwining your identity. And so now the next question I would ask you guys is, how do you intertwine your identities with your SciComm work? How do you kind of utilize that? Eli, you might want to go this time first.
Well, I'm just thinking back to Tyus's presentation and how 75% of your brand is your personality and how valuable that is, and being engaging and really making a name for yourself, or really, owning social media and your brand. I think that your identity and your personality is extremely beneficial. So can you repeat the question again? I already got lost with it.
Kind of like how you intertwine your own identity into your work, whatever identity that may be.
Yeah, I guess I try to keep my like separate interests and hobbies like a little bit. I don't feel the need to talk about them as much, just because I prefer to like keep my social media a little bit more uniform, especially YouTube, to continue providing things that people are expecting, because that is great for engagement. But within each video, I think it's important, or within each post, I think it's important to not be afraid to be yourself and showcase parts of your personality.
Yeah. So we're kind of here wrapping up kind of a little past 5. There's another meeting right after this one on academic blogs and how to kind of create that. I'll put the link in the chat, register for Zoom. We can answer any last minute questions, but kind of wrapping up here. Don't know if Tyus or Eli have any parting words for people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess really the thing I would have to say is just be true to yourself. Don't let anybody stifle your attempts to show the world your brilliance and your greatness. Everybody has a light, and we all have a spark to inspire others. So it's only up to you to decide how you want to utilize that. Nobody else can chart or transcribe your journey for you. That's only up to you. And I've had a great experience so far on social media. I've had some rough experiences from some haters jumping in the comments, but I mean, we live in a world with over 7.13 billion people, so it's like there's a lot of individuals to interact with when we live on a digital realm that connects everybody. So at least for majority of the world that has access to the internet, but don't let that don't let that hinder your ability to go like, I have something to offer, to everybody, and I'm going to do what I got to do. And yeah, I hope you guys all, eventually, if you guys are on Twitter, keep it up. If you guys are thinking about Twitter or thinking about YouTube or Instagram, hopefully we see you guys on there. Everybody is brilliant. I don't think there's a standardization or prerequisite for somebody going like, only these types of people can be successful on social media. I highly disagree with that. Because as we already know, there's lots of individuals who use sensationalism, unethically in order to get views. And then there are an equal amount of people that do it the right way and are still successful. So, there is no one specific way to do it, but there are obviously people doing it the correct way, and you can do it too. So.
Beautifully said.
Thanks. That's fantastic. I think the last thing I wanted to leave off on, I'm sorry, I'm going over here, but it's that it can be really hard to put yourself out there on social media, and it can be there's millions of people that can possibly come across your whatever you're putting out there, and there's bound to be someone that is going to have something to say. You have to be confident in yourself and just believe in what you're providing. It's just so unfortunate that there are so many people that just feel like they can just hide behind a shroud of the virtual atmosphere and just feel like they can destroy others. But that's why I think it's really important to not let social media run your life and not let social media be everything. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I actually deleted basically all of my social media except for YouTube in the past few weeks, just because it is such a difficult space to compare yourself. And it's so easy to compare yourself to everyone around you in different situations. And so that's when I think it's really important to every now and then put your blinders on, live your life, and not think so much about what others are doing and feel like you need to constantly prove something on social media. I think that I had a huge problem with that in this past year, feeling like just graduated, had to move home with my parents, and just like feeling like I constantly need to prove something, that I'm still this Fulbright scholar, that I'm still this double bachelor's graduate. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And I think that what's most important is that you're doing something that you love and you can talk about something that you love. So remember to put the blinders on every now and then and stop thinking so much about what others think.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again. Thank you, Tyus and Eli, for both speaking today. That was our science communication panel. Again, the link to the next little meeting is in the chat, all about academic blogging. Feel free to go over there. And then this will also be recorded and uploaded to YouTube if you ever want to watch it again.